Good afternoon. Thought I'd take a moment today to discuss the Treadle Hammer. There have been a few questions about what it is, how it works, a little bit about design, so I thought we would address some of those issues. At its simplest, a treadle hammer is really just a foot-powered hammer. As your foot comes down, it controls linkage that brings the hammerhead down. This is not a real new idea. There are old historical drawings and patents for what became known as an Oliver hammer that was pretty much a sledgehammer on a spring-loaded linkage with a pedal, so you could step on the pedal to bring the sledgehammer down, and your regular anvil served as the anvil for it. This one has its own great big anvil. The head on this particular hammer is what's referred to as an inline hammer. That means that it always comes straight down the same way. And this is an improvement over the earlier hammers that were swing arm hammers and would run in an arc as they came down. And that presented some problems, but not very many. Those are still really good hammers, and I wouldn't turn one down if somebody tried to give you one or sell you one cheap. But the inline hammer actually uses rollerblade wheels as the guides for the hammerhead. The hammer itself is a piece of 3-inch square tubing that's filled with lead, probably up to here somewhere. It's about a 60-pound head weight overall. The springs that lift this are simply garage door springs, and there's 3 of them. And I have experimented at times with different weights of springs depending on what I was doing under the hammer. Generally, I think it's not worth the trouble to change them, but you can get heavier and lighter springs. And when you step, the springs stretch, and then you can see this linkage in the back is connected to the treadle and connected to the swing arm for the head, which is up here. And it has a turnbuckle, so you can adjust the treadle height and to some extent the preload on the springs to make life easier or harder on yourself, depending on what you need to do. Right now it's set with a fairly low treadle, which is easy to get onto, but it's a little bit more push. But once you get it going, it goes, and it will do a lot of work. So what good is a treadle hammer in your shop? Why in the world would you want to own one of these things? Well, this is the equivalent of a helper swinging a sledgehammer. So if you have a piece of bar that needs to be flatted with a flatter, you have one hand holding the flatter, one hand holding the bar. You don't have any way to swing a hammer to strike the flatter. The treadle hammer does that for you. Do you need to run a hot chisel to split something? Or to cut a little design in there? Treadle hammer makes very short work of that kind of stuff. And we can go back to the flatter and level that back up. This bottom plate is easily removable. It just sits in there, and it can be replaced with just about any bottom tool that has, in this case, a 1-inch hardy hole. So I can have matching top and bottom fullers, and I can work with that. I can have matching top and bottom swedges. These don't match, but somewhere around here I've got a top swedge that'll match that. But you can see a little bit of a problem here. That doesn't quite fit because I don't have enough room here. So you need to make sure your hardy shanks are short enough. If you're going to cut all the way through with a chisel, you can put a soft plate on there. And that's a brass plate with a little frame around it, so I can cut through and not mess up my usual bottom die that I use in the hammer. You can also take put in top and bottom dies for this. The top die is wedged in. So it's a fairly easy matter to just swap dies out, put in a new wedge. Now I have drawing dies in the hammer. Now, this is not as effective as doing this under a power hammer or a press by any means, but there's no electricity, no power or air compressor of any kind whatsoever, and it does an amazing amount of work. I am only scratching the surface of what you can do with the treadle hammer. There's so much more that's possible. While it's a bit risky, you can also use handheld tools under the treadle hammer. If you're going to do that, there's a real chance of hurting yourself unless there's a way to stop the head from coming down. And that's what this is. It's just simply a pipe clamp that's set in there, and it can be raised up until that tool just barely fits under there. And that means I'm not going to smash my hand if that tool kicks out of there because I'm working at a funny angle. And now I can use a hand chisel and this is much more controllable than most handle tools, and you can do a lot of work cold this way. But without having any layout, that's just a few squiggly lines. But you can be very detailed doing this, and if you're cutting a lot of things with a chisel or doing a lot of incised decorations, a treadle hammer is hugely useful, and it can be pretty safe with a stop like this. A better option is actually a chain to an arm on top of the treadle hammer so the head can't come down. But I don't have room in my shop ceiling to put an arm to hang a chain from. I'd have to hang it from the ceiling, and I don't want to do that. That's a very quick look at this hammer. If you watch my videos, you'll know that I use this really quite often. And there are so many things that it will do that I have never even scratched the surface of. This particular style of treadle hammer was designed by Mr. Clay Spencer, and he has donated the plans for this hammer to ABANA, the Artist Blacksmithing Association of North America. If you want to build a hammer like this, it's a do-it-yourself job. They aren't available for sale, although there are quite a few other versions of treadle hammers out there for sale. I don't know exactly who has them. You'll have to do a search on the internet or ask your local blacksmithing group who's got treadle hammers. But if you want to build this one, go to abana.org and buy a set of the plans. They're very detailed. That's how I did this. My shop is not set up for doing this. I actually enrolled in welding classes at the local community college, and because the instructor knew I wasn't really there to be a welder, I was there just to learn a few skills. He let me use the equipment in the shop to build this hammer. I don't know if you can get a deal like that or not, but it worked well for me. But it's a great hammer. The handle here is just if you need a little bit of extra oomph. Drop that stop if you're not using it, because you'll be sorry. And that stop should have a rubber tip on it. I need to find a new rubber crutch tip to put on there. But that's really the basics of it. It's a big, heavy hammer. This is solid steel down here. You can build them with tube and fill them with sand, but the solid bar is a much better option. Just a quick introduction to the tool. If you don't have power in your shop, this will get you by where you might otherwise want a power hammer. It will do a lot of things you can't do under a power hammer. Really, if you can have both, I'd have both. But a treadle hammer is very useful, very practical, hardworking, and it's a pretty good place to start if you're just thinking about adding bigger tooling to your shop, this isn't bad. Now, I mentioned that Clay Spencer designed this. Clay Spencer has been a long-time member of the Colorado Rocky Mountain Smiths, even though he doesn't live anywhere near the Rocky Mountains. And he has demonstrated numerous times at the Rocky Mountain Blacksmithing Conference. Frequently when he demonstrates how to use the Treadle Hammer. If you go to RockyMountainSmiths.org, and I'll try to put a link down here again, you can find videos of the conference demonstrations where Clay demonstrated how to use this hammer or the previous version of this hammer, one of the swing arm hammers. Tons of information in those videos. Sometimes they're a little hard to watch because they're shot on the fly at the conference. There's no post-production editing, but the information is there. You get to see his tooling. You get to see how he works under one. If you're going to buy a treadle hammer, going to build a treadle hammer, I highly recommend you watch Clay work under one, and those videos are a great way to do that. And no, Rocky Mountain Smiths is not paying me to plug the DVD sales. It's not really a for-profit thing. It's non-profit. You're just covering production cost if you buy one. So that's it. A quick little video for today. I'm going to get back to work and try and get a few projects in the mail before the weekend. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button below. And come back next week and we'll have some more videos. Thanks a lot.